Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's Employee of the Month, 2 months in a row. Leave a message at the... Hi, Jamie. It's me, Jamie. I just had a new idea for our song about the Name Your Price tool. So when it's like, tell us what you want to pay, hey, 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 and the trombone goes, blah, 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 and you say, we'll help you find coverage options to fit your budget. Then we just all do finger snaps while a choir goes, savings coming at ya, savings coming at ya. Yes? No? Maybe? Anyway, see your practice tonight. I got new lyrics for the rap break.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
All right, yeah, our roster looks great on paper. Whoop-de hell. All right. But at the end of the day, we better be a good team. And you start building that during this time of the year.
Get your sorry ass up! Get your sorry ass up!
Doing a lot of talking with somebody that ain't do shit today. Doing a lot of talking.
Do you think you're better than Jarrell Revis is right now?
I'm better than you. My 24 years of life, I'm better at life than you.
Dave! Time to go to work!
I ain't 36. I ain't never seen you before, huh? Better go tell the coach you need some help. We gonna expose you, boy. All right, we coming at your ass.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Roundtable.
Let's go! Let's go!
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find them at FTFPodNet on Twitter. You can find me at SportsFanaticMB on Twitter. And you can find my co-host for the day, Mr. Matthew Fox at Nighthawk7734 on Twitter, and Mr. Tony Dyer at Commissioner MR on Twitter. We are just one of a ton of great podcasts associated with this network, some of which are the likes of Jim Day of FF Champs, Corey Parsons and Dr. Roto from SiriusXM Radio, Bob Lung of the award-winning Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, Dwayne McFarland, Blake Sullivan, and a ton of great others. You can find all of us on FullTimeFantasy.com, your one-stop fantasy shop for all of your fantasy news, advice, and strategies. We are also excited to be partnering with ExpandTheBoxScore.com. You can find them at XTBoxScore on Twitter. They have some of the best stats in the industry: baseball, football, basketball, and of course college football, the biggest one, as those are the hardest to find. They have some of the best college football stats in the industry, and for just $15 a year, you can get access to all of them. If you use our code ROUNDTABLE, you get 10% off of that. Is the best deal in the industry. I'm telling you, their stats are phenomenal. Really great way to look at the way college players perform and their stats if you're looking to get into the stats side of fantasy. For today's episode, Matt, Tony, and I are going to talk a little bit about vampire leagues and then tanking, what is and is not acceptable in dynasty leagues, as you really don't matter if you tank in redraft leagues for the most part. We're going to jump on and talk about those. A nice quick episode before tonight's game, possible elimination game. We'll get Tony's thoughts on that as well, as he is a big Colts fan as the Colts and the Texans battle it out tonight. Hello! And as always on Thursdays, we've got Tony and Matt with us. How you guys doing? How your week's been so far?
Going pretty good here. A little cold and snow today, but I have the warm feeling in my heart from looking at Baby Yoda memes to keep me going.
Oh, Baby Yoda, Mandolorian. We can get into that too here in a minute. We got a nice easy episode today, so I'll save that for the end of the podcast too. I did not know that you were watching that, so I'd love to talk to you about that here in a minute as well.
I almost started watching that today. I got Disney Plus, I guess it was Monday night. And I was sitting on the couch today scrolling through. I ended up watching Star Wars Episode 1 instead. But
oh, my God.
I know. I want to wait. I want more of The Mandalorian to come out, and then I'll watch a whole bunch of it all at once.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest complaint about it. I hate that I have to wait a week to watch it. I'm very much into that now binge culture of having everything right there in front of me and wanting to watch all of it. Being only able to watch one episode at a time has really kind of sucked.
Well, we do... because I have Disney Plus because I'm a Disney Rewards member. I bought 3 years in advance at a low price, but
gotcha.
A lot of the people at our work aren't. So at lunchtime, since the episodes are only like 30, 35 minutes, we've been having watch parties at lunch. That's been pretty
nice. Fun. Yeah, I don't have that going for me, but I've enjoyed it. We'll save that for the end there in case people are not Star Wars fans, don't want to talk about Mandalorian. As I said, we've got a pretty easy episode ahead of us today, so we can save that for the end. Let's go ahead and talk about the vampire leagues. We've talked about them a little bit here and there. It's always is a very interesting concept. I think this really popped up last year. Was last year really the first time that this kind of came up and a lot of people started playing in them?
Yeah, it was. The concept was kind of introduced by Tom Quisenberry during the off season last year, and a lot of people kind of picked up and started going with them. And I know Matthew Berry's done the last 2 years with some folks from the Fantasy Life app, but I did my first one last year, and now I'm in 2 this year.
Very nice. And what about you, Tony? Is this your first year that you're in a Vampire League? Were you playing in it last year as well?
Nope, first year for me. Mostly a group from work and a few friends from outside from other fantasy leagues. But for the most part, it was just a small group who wanted to try something new that sounded fun.
Very nice, very nice. All right, so talk to me about it. Whichever one of you wants to go first, tell me how your teams are doing. Talk about some of the players that you've acquired. For those of you who don't know the way that it works, and if I get this wrong, please correct me. You guys go into a matchup every week against, say you're playing me this week, and I have Saquon Barkley on my team. Before the matchup, you declare that, hey, if I win, I get to take Saquon Barkley, and I'm giving you back whatever running back is on my roster, correct? And it works for all positions.
I think it kind of depends on your. There are a few different iterations of how it can happen. So I have one that we started last year as a Vampire Dynasty League, and as the Vampire, I have to declare by Tuesday who I'm targeting, but I'm free to target anyone on their roster, and then I have to trade like position for like position. In the redraft league that I'm in, where I'm the Vampire, you don't have to make a declaration, but you have to trade starter for starter, like position for like position. So usually if I win, I try to see what trade I want to make.
And mine is set up like the second way that he described. It's a redraft setting. It's I don't have to declare who I'll be taking. It's just starter for starter, position for position. It's the same as he described.
Okay, so I have a question on that then. You guys said starter for starter. So say, I'll just keep with the Saquon Barkley theme since I named him a minute ago. Say I have Saquon Barkley on my team and I know I'm playing you this week and I decide to bench him. Are you still allowed to take him? Or when you mean starter, does it mean any roster position or does it mean someone I actually started in my starting lineup?
No, if you were to bench Saquon in my format, he would not be available for me to take.
Interesting.
Yeah, so in the redraft league that I'm a part of, it has to be somebody out of the starting lineup. So if he got benched, you couldn't take anybody. In the dynasty version that I'm in, I can take somebody off IR if that's who I want. I can take anyone. But I can only do the Vampire can only can't do the same position consecutive weeks. So that adds a little strategy. You have to look ahead at who you're playing. Like if you look at their roster and you could go either way on a running back or a receiver, you look at who you're playing the following week, and if they only have running backs, then you know you better declare for a receiver. So like I made a tactical error here at the end this week. I declared for Cortland Sutton because I'm a Broncos fan, of course, and forgot that next week I'm playing the guy that has DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh, man.
So, sometimes that was a wrinkle we added as a strategy thing.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it has been that team. So I don't know if you want to talk about rosters, Tony. If you want to go first, because I actually have a roster question for you guys.
Well, let me ask one question real quick before we get to the rosters. Has anybody actually done that? So what I brought up earlier with, like, say, the Saquon Barkley thing, because then obviously bye weeks could end up, I wouldn't say screwing you, but say, like this week, if you were playing someone with Dalvin Cook, they're obviously not going to have Dalvin Cook in their starting lineup because he's on a bye, so that would kind of limit your chance of getting him. But have you guys noticed throughout this past year when you've been playing people, have they, just in case, or if they think they're going to lose to you, has anybody benched one of their better players so that you can't take them?
Yeah, I had one do that.
Okay.
Essentially, he left me with Robert Woods. Robert Woods was the only player in the lineup that was desirable, so he kind of handcuffed me. This was right before everything started happening with the personal time away. But I really didn't have much of a choice because the other guys were just no good, and all those good players were on his bench. He probably would have lost anyway, although I don't know. That might not have worked out. He still might have had Robert Woods heavy. I didn't do the math, but he probably still would have Robert Woods.
What about you, Matt? Has that happened to you this year?
So I think I posted to our group chat the matchup I had last week. You can see that almost everybody had gotten benched. And then somebody reminded that in our league, you have to set a full legal lineup. You can't, if you think you're going to lose, just put in everybody who's injured or on a bye or whatever. You can't throw them into a lineup and purposely tank. So he had to go back and correct his lineup, and because of that, I ended up taking Kelsey because because I was actually just going to do a defense for defense trade because there was none of those players. You saw that. I can't remember what it all was stacked up, but when I was looking, I'm like, even though my team's not fantastic, none of those would be an upgrade for me. Those would be, because a lot of them were on IR. He had several IR players in lineup, so he actually had to change. So I think that was a bummer for him. But we have that rule. You have to set a complete legal lineup. But I've seen a couple of weeks where there were players I wish I could have gotten, but somebody was on bye. And so you kind of do the best you can.
Yeah, I've got the same rule too. Bye weeks and injuries, you got to have them out of the lineup.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so talk about some of the rosters. I don't know if you guys can remember what you started out with, but if you could, give us an idea of what you started with compared to what you're looking at now. Especially, I mean, obviously, if you've been successful, you likely have a lot of better players now compared to what you did have.
Sure. My week 1 lineup was Kirk Cousins, Frank Gore, Matt Breida, Corey Davis, Pettis, Jack Doyle. Oh, not a very good lineup. Cole Beasley, LaShawn McCoy on the bench, Golden Tate suspended. So Golden Tate was arguably my best player out of the draft, but was suspended. Now, fast forward to week 12. Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill, Dalvin Cook. Things are much, much better than they were 11 weeks ago.
Is this like a 2-team league? Like, holy crap.
No, it's
I know, I'm joking.
It's 12-team, actually. It's a 12-team league.
No,
well, the big thing, too, about Vampire is the Vampire, in a lot of iterations, has exclusive rights to the waivers, and in my version, they have allowed people to have five moves per season. So it really gives you the advantage when there's injuries and things. I've taken almost anybody's handcuff. I have top waiver priority, and I can do whatever I want. I'm pretty sure it's got to be similar for Tony.
Yeah, it is.
So that enables you to overcome some of the things that would hamper other people.
That's perfect to bring up, actually. Wayne Gallman was one of the pickups for me this year, and he's actually a guy that won me a week. Nobody else could have him, so it was just an advantage of the Vampire.
Very nice. And so to clarify, which is probably my job, my bad as a host, not clarifying this beforehand, so I don't think we brought it up. When you were talking about the draft, Tony, you guys don't actually get to draft teams, correct? Your team comes basically right off of whatever's left on the waiver wire after the other 11 teams do a draft?
Yeah, that's the easiest way to describe that.
Okay. I'm assuming that's the same thing for you as well, Matt?
Yeah, and for the Dynasty one, I did that last year, and I had some players carrying over. Also, we have really, really tight rosters, and people dropped some players that ended up really benefiting me. Like I started the year on that team with Emmanuel Sanders, Larry Fitzgerald, and Austin Hooper because they were all dropped around the rookie draft time, and Dak. Dak was another one that was dropped around rookie draft time, so I went to go get them, and that's obviously made quite a difference, especially things like Austin Hooper. It was funny at the time, the guy that dropped him did it because he's like, yeah, I need to drop Hooper because I need a real tight end, and I thought Hooper was pretty good last year. That'd be better than what I've got right now, so I went and scooped him up. And that's worked out pretty good. I had my Vampire targets from last year because I was the Vampire last year, but I only won 2 games, and I finished last place and ended up being it again. So we changed some of the rules. But one of those Vampire players I started with is AJ Green. I'm still waiting for him to actually ever play for me.
Wow.
How so I'm curious, in a redraft league, is it just like a random designation for you guys in the one that you're in? Is it just randomly picked who's going to be the Vampire, or do you guys get to choose?
Mine was random. Well, you used an online randomizer.
Yeah, everyone that I've done, it was random to see who was going to get it. I actually had joined the redraft league, the second format, because I thought it'd be fun to play against someone who was a vampire, and randomly got picked to be the vampire again. And I thought, well, I guess it's my lot in life.
All right, and then Matt, I know you were talking about the one that you're in a dynasty league with. Are you always the vampire, or is that the same thing? It just randomizes every year?
You can only be at 2 years in a row max, so I would come out anyway. But I'm actually the second place team right now.
Okay.
I started with those. So last year I won 2 games. The first game I won was in the second or third week of the season, and I took Le'Veon Bell because I actually thought he was still going to come back, and that did not work out for me at all. But I had last year in our draft pool, a couple of the guys I was able to get post draft were Tyler Lockett and Philip Lindsay, so they were kind of the only real players I had that were viable for me last year. But I had Bell coming back this year, made me excited. And I told you about a couple of the guys I picked up on waivers. Well, the very first week I won and took Saquon Barkley. But now my vampire team's kind of a joke for everyone else. Not as funny, but I have Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara. I took Todd Gurley. I took Devontae Adams. I've taken Juju Smith-Schuster. I've taken Carson Wentz. I took Travis Kelce. So, and I've taken Amari Cooper. So my starting lineup that's going into this week where I'm declared for Cortland Sutton, I have Dak, Saquon, Kamara, Lockett, Devontae Adams. I have to play Ryan Griffin because Hooper's hurt, and Kelsey's on bye, and then I have Bell.
Gotcha. So in your dynasty one, is it just last placed becomes the vampire every year, or is it randomized?
The last place team becomes a vampire and gets stripped of rookie picks.
Gotcha.
And then has to come over, and we have a tight roster and are required to drop for. So I'm actually going to end up probably having to, unless I trade them for something, I'm going to end up having to drop something that somebody would see as a viable starter, which is what happened to me as the vampire. Those guys were getting ready to do their rookie draft, and they cut people like Hooper and Larry Fitzgerald, who actually, has been pretty decent and was an upgrade for me. People cut Emmanuel Sanders, thought he wasn't going to come back. I picked him up on a hedge that he would be ready to start the season, and that actually helped me earlier in the year. And then I was able to use a top waiver claim on Terry McLaurin, so that helped at the beginning. I ended up having a pretty decent start, but I'm sure that everyone that I end up having to put on waivers in the offseason is going to end up on the Vampires team.
Gotcha. All right, so we heard some of Tony's roster. What is whichever one you want to give us, your redraft or your dynasty one, the roster, what it looked like beforehand, and then give us an idea of what it looks like now.
So in redraft, I actually know exactly both rosters where I started with because I wrote about it for Fantasy Life app blog. So I'm pulling up my redraft, post-draft. I had quarterbacks Kirk Cousins and Jacoby Brissett. Running backs Peyton Barber, Jalen Richard, Devin Singletary, and LaShawn McCoy. I had Josh Gordon because we had drafted early, and I got him. Nobody drafted him, and I picked him up like days before his suspension got lifted. So I was super excited at the time. That hasn't incredibly panned out. I had Jamison Crowder, Deebo Samuel, Devontae Parker, and Deshaun Hamilton, and I took Kyle Rudolph and Noah Fant at tight end. So far, I am 5-6, and I am in 8th place. So I'm still chasing for playoffs with 2 weeks. But now my current starting lineup for this week, I have Brissett going. I still have Singletary, and that's panned out pretty well for me. I was able to take Leonard Fournette in one victory, so he's my other starting running back. Wide receivers is where I've taken most of them. I have DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, and Kenny Golladay now. And I also, last week when I won, took Travis Kelce. So this week that doesn't help me because I'm playing Fant. But my lineup question for you guys was I was trying to figure out with this Vampire team, because not only do I want to win to get players, but I'm actually pretty close. I'm 5-6, and the bottom playoff team is 6-5. So I have a reasonable chance. I was looking at it, and I actually, given Detroit's crappy kind of situation, I put Golladay on the bench and put in Crowder. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I don't. I'm trying to think. Who's Detroit playing this week?
Detroit is playing Washington. The Jets are at home against Oakland.
I mean,
they have almost
Crowder's
the same projection,
good.
And they're like right next to each other in the rankings,
right?
Which didn't help me. The last couple weeks watching Golladay with Driscoll, even though he hasn't been too bad, it feels like Galladay's top end has kind of disappeared, and that Crowder has been the guy that Sam Darnold is throwing everything to.
Yeah, I mean, that part is definitely true. See, it'd be so hard for me to sit Golladay, though, because he's such a stud. I mean, I know Crowder has been good, especially with Sam Darnold being out there. I think he's averaging like 12 points at least 12 points when Sam Darnold's on the field because he gets so many catches and everything. And Oakland's so bad against the pass, though. I think that's kind of why I would probably lean still Golladay. But, I mean, Washington, they're just as bad. My goodness.
Actually, Washington is 17th. Oakland is 23rd, according to the rankings I'm looking at. That was part of why Detroit's actually a worse pass defense than Washington is.
Right. Well, the other thing with Detroit, you mean Oakland?
Yeah. Oh, my other option was Terry McLaurin to put in, but I don't feel like I can play him because Haskins doesn't look like he can throw.
I wouldn't play McLaurin. It would come down to Golladay and Crowder for me. See, I can't think of his name. Why? The cornerback who just came over to him, Landon Collins. There we go. I was trying to think of who was that joint, because I don't think Collins will be over Crowder, obviously, with Crowder being in the slot. So, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong either way. Galladay's upside is so much more to me than Crowder's. Like, I agree. Galladay's floor is probably lower than Crowder's with the way he's been playing with Darnold right now, but I would probably stick with Galladay's upside. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I think you ended up at the same spot I would have ended up at. You're going to get the target volume for sure out of Crowder, and we know exactly what that'll translate to in yards after the catch and touchdowns. With Golladay, he's much more of a big play threat, much more of an end zone target. I would think I should look things like that up before I say that. But
yeah, that's the big thing. Crowder has, he was just a high volume PPR, but the last few weeks with Darnold, he's been the end zone guy. I mean, he had a 25-yard touchdown strike last week. He's gotten a couple of the touchdowns. It feels like he and Demaryius Thomas and Ryan Griffin are the ones that Darnold's looking for, and not Robbie Anderson.
I don't know, man. I like this is not a fun decision to make, I guess.
Yeah,
because I feel crazy benching Golladay, but I want to play Crowder. I wish I could play both.
Yeah.
Well, I'd rather play Hopkins and Thomas, I think. So.
Thomas. Which Thomas? What am I thinking? Thomas?
Michael Thomas
gotcha,
and DeAndre Hopkins are my two, and the wide receiver. This is my flex option.
Obviously, you can't move Crowder or Golladay above either one of those. Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong decision to make, because I think both have good matchups. I understand them going to Crowder thing, because Jeff Driscoll, I guess if you wanted to boil it down to the smallest of arguments against both of them, you would probably take Sam Darnold right now over Jeff Driscoll. So I could see why going with Crowder would be the better play. I probably would still stick with Kenny Golladay, but I'm one of those people who Kenny Galladay's a guy I'm probably never going to quit. Once everybody else is done with Kenny Golladay and they're leaving, I'm going to be sitting there right next to Kenny Golladay and turning off the lights. Like, I'm right there with Kenny Golladay. I'm going to ride him until it's far too late to get rid of him. So I personally would start him, but I understand the argument for Crowder.
Part of me wondered too, since Hopkins plays tonight, if he rolls out and has like a 10 or a 12 point game, my thinking is maybe then I go back and put Galladay in, hoping I'm going to get a high upside.
Right.
But if Hopkins has like 20 or 30 points, I was thinking I would probably just stick with Crowder for the floor.
I gotcha. Do you have did you want to talk at all about your redraft league, your lineup?
That was the redraft league. The dynasty lineup, I think I gave it just a little while ago. This week I have Dak Prescott, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Tyler Lockett, Devontae Adams, Ryan Griffin, and Le'Veon Bell is my flex. I chose Bell over Gurley and Amari Cooper based on matchups because Bell's going against the Raiders, whereas Gurley has Baltimore, and Cooper obviously is getting Stephon Gilmore and the Patriots. So I felt like that was probably a better matchup.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So you were mentioning Hopkins and how they are playing tonight. So before I guess we get into the tanking discussion, I want to ask you, Tony, because I kind of feel like this almost could be an elimination game tonight going on between the Colts and the Texans. The winner of this is going to get not really a huge lead. They're going to get a one-game lead in the division. But the AFC wildcard race is pretty tight right now. There's about 6 teams vying for it, and both teams have interesting schedules moving forward. So you being a Colts fan, how confident are you in the game tonight against the Texans? And if you guys lose, how comfortable do you feel that you're still going to make the playoffs?
Well, first of all, if we lose, I'm not comfortable. I don't remember the statistic exactly, but the winner, if the Colts win, there's something like 78 to 80% likely to make a playoff appearance. If they lose, they're less than 50%. That's a tweet that I saw.
Schefter said 20%.
Yeah, okay. That sounds about right. I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I liked what we saw last week against Jacksonville, contrary to what we saw against Miami. It was interesting to have 200-yard rushers. That makes me feel better about Mac not being there.
Right.
It's interesting to see that the secondary of Houston is jeopardized. There's an opportunity there for Jacoby to pass the ball too. So, as a Colts fan, I feel like they can win this game. But as a person who's paying attention to football, I don't want to count out Deshaun Watson. The trick is going to be that pressure to Deshaun Watson. He's had an ankle injury. He's been a full participant, but listed with an ankle injury all week. And last week, he just got clobbered. If the Colts can get through a suspect offensive line and keep pressure on Watson, I think the Colts can win this game. But if they let him air the ball out, it looks like Fuller may be playing. Hopkins is obviously a huge problem for Indianapolis. If they give Deshaun Watson time to let those guys get open, it could be ugly for the Colts.
Yeah, I actually saw that play for Deshaun Watson last week. I'm honestly kind of surprised that ankle injury did not end up being more serious than it obviously is. It looked like he snapped his ankle. So I'm really kind of surprised that he's going to be out there. I'm with you. I think it's going to be a really good game tonight. I hope the Colts pull it off, mostly because I want to look smart, and I'd pick the Colts to win this division, even with the Texans doing everything they did. Matt, what are your thoughts going into this game tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a really pivotal game for both teams. It's kind of too bad for the Colts that they're going into this important division game without their top running back. And, I don't know, Tony, if you've seen any updates about T.Y. Hilton. Last thing I saw was that he was a true game time decision, that they were going to run him out there. So I guess we'll find out in about 30 minutes or so from our time. But they've just had such bad injury luck for their players. Meanwhile, it looks like the Texans are getting Fuller back, maybe getting a little stronger on offense. But weird things happen. I actually thought Houston was going to play well and had a chance going into Baltimore last week. I actually had picked them to win that game. I thought they might do it, and they got rolled.
Yeah, I did too.
And I thought Jacksonville might be tough for the Colts, and they just blew Jacksonville out, even though Foles gave them an early 7-0 lead. So, it's hard to count out. I've been very impressed with what Frank Reich has done with the team the last couple of years. And there's a reason beyond Andrew Luck that a lot of people thought, myself included, that the Colts were going to be legitimate Super Bowl contenders, and that's because they had a good roster altogether. And I think we've seen that even with going to Brissett, who's not Luck, but who's been pretty darn impressive in what he's done, has given them a chance. And division matchups are always weird. Weird things happen in division matchups anyway, so no outcome feels like it would surprise me tonight.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's going to be an interesting game. We've gotten hopefully a much better game than what we saw last Thursday. Matt, me and you were kind of talking about this a little bit on Monday's podcast. Since it happened last time, or after we talked last time, I guess I'll give you guys a chance if you want to say anything on it. Obviously, the news came out today that Larry Ogunjobi's keeping his 1-game suspension. Marquise Pouncey's was dropped from 3 to 2, and then right now Myles Garrett is still going to have an indefinite suspension, which I think they're, in all honesty, doing that in case the Browns make the playoffs. If they don't put a game number on it, it allows him to come back next year. If they put, say, 8 games on it, they only have 6 regular season games if the Browns don't make the playoffs. That would be 2 games next season. I could be wrong on that. That would be kind of my thinking on it. Do you have, either one of you want to say anything about the incident? I know we were talking a lot about it in the chat, and then you guys were posting stuff on Twitter. So if you guys want to say anything on it here before we jump into talking about tanking, feel free to go ahead and do it now. And nothing. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's talk about tanking then. That's works for me. All right, so we're going to talk about tanking now. Obviously, in the NFL, you really don't see teams doing this. We've seen it happen in MLB and in the NBA. The Dolphins are, in a way, doing it this year, although they're doing it kind of badly in winning games. Teams do it in Dynasty, though, and so I had a big thing pop up in one of my home Dynasty leagues this weekend, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on it, because I've never had this issue before, and I've been, as many of you know, in a ton of leagues. And I've never really seen this happen. So I want to get your opinions first, or your thoughts on what tanking means and what you should and shouldn't do. And then I'm going to give you guys the situation that happened and how it was handled. And I want to see what your thoughts are on that. So Tony, I'll start with you. If you're in a league and your team is just horrible, what to you is okay to do when you're tanking and what is not okay to do?
Tanking to me is a very specific word. Tanking means losing on purpose, I would think.
Yes,
I don't think there's ever a point. The only way you could possibly lose on purpose is with a promise to be winning as a result of that. So that would mean a trade. If you're trading a player away, that doesn't necessarily, like, let's say you're trading away the only guy you got, so you're not going to win any more games this year for sure.
Yeah.
That would be I guess I would call that more of like a productive struggle. That's a phrase I've heard before.
Okay. That's fair enough.
But deliberate tanking, so ignoring a bye week or ignoring an injury.
Yeah.
Different story completely. That's not acceptable. I think that's never anything that's come up in any of my, but once it does, I would bet that I would hope that the result would be that the owner has to go back in and put a starting player, or the commissioner would have to go back in and put a starting player into that lineup. Gotcha. I don't know how that would work out, so maybe that's a different discussion. Mm-hmm. But yeah, generally tanking is something I think should be very frowned upon.
All right, what about you, Dennis? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Matt. I'm talking to Dennis on my phone right now, and that was a bad slip on my part. Matt, what do you think about tanking in a dynasty league?
I agree the same. Pretty much, there are teams where you're not very good and you're probably not going to win. I think you need to set a legal lineup every week. The other thing is, especially as we're coming down the stretch here, it's not just what you're doing, it's the potential that it has to radically shift the teams that are still trying to play for the playoffs. Yeah. If you're playing a team who's on the playoff bubble and you lay down and put in an incorrect, a purposefully losing lineup, and that team gets a win, whereas the guy who, they're fighting with in the playoffs has to play another team who is also fighting for the playoffs and has to struggle and takes a tough loss that way. I think that's, really unfair. You want in as much as possible in every league for the best teams to be able to make the playoffs because they won their way in.
Yeah. So what happened? I'm curious now. The more, as he went on about that, I started getting mad at this person who was tanking, and I don't even know who they are or what they did yet.
Right. So, okay. So here's my thing. if you go about it the right way, I don't see an issue in you tanking, because it's a $75 entry league. You pay $75 every single year to get in this league. So you're paying money to pretty much come in here and lose. If that's what you want to do, by all means, go ahead and do it. So this guy, this is our 6th year. He has won 2 championships so far. He won it in the first year and the third year, and I'll be honest, he should have won it last year. He is someone who, he just doesn't like social media, so he stays off it, and he's owned Todd Gurley since he came into the league. Well, last year, everything, for those of you who might not remember, leading up until week 16 in the championship game, Todd Gurley was supposed to play. He was playing me in the championship game. He did not find out that Todd Gurley was out of the lineup, and so he never put CJ Anderson in. So he ended up losing to me in the championship game by like 15 points, and CJ Anderson went off for a lot more than 15. I think he put up like 25 or something like that. So had he had put CJ Anderson in, he would have beat me by 10 points and won back-to-back championships, 3 championships in now 6 years. So he's had a phenomenal team. What he decided to do is, much like a lot of other people this year, he thought Gurley was kind of washed, so he traded him. At which point he decided, you know what, I'm going to go all in to a rebuild, is the way that he worded it, and he traded away all of his good players. And I mean all of them. The only player that he kept, I believe, was Mike Evans, was by far the best player that he kept on his team, which again, there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion in a dynasty league, because if you believe in yourself that much and your scouting ability, or however you want to look at it, to draft good rookies, then good on you. I mean, you are, again, paying $75 to come in and lose. My issue with it is, so this year he did exactly what you said you should never do, Tony. And I didn't know, it's my fault as the commissioner of this league. I should have paid better attention. He started 4 players on a bye week this past week. He scored 38 points altogether in a matchup.
Wow.
And it was brought to my attention, and my problem is I'm very firm as a commissioner on you cannot change rules in the middle of the season. No matter how bad something happens or whatever the issue is, you cannot just change rules, because that just, to me, affects the whole integrity of a league. I don't think that you can just change rules. So I didn't want to go in and change his lineup like you brought up. I thought about it, but then I was like, there's not a rule in place to deal with this, because I thought the people that we had brought into this league had more integrity to do that. So I asked him what had happened. His excuse was, well, I already knew my team was going to lose, so I didn't even check my lineup this week to see if anybody was on a bye. Which, of course, in all honesty, kind of set me off a little bit, because I'm in another league with him where my team is horrible, and I did the same thing. I traded away Aaron Jones. I can't even remember. I traded away 3 really good players to get back 6 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. So, because I wanted to build through the draft coming in this year. I was like, I'm just going to trade my players away, knowing that I'm not going to have a good year this year, but I still set my lineup every week. And it sucks. My team is like 2-10 or whatever it is right now. My team is horrible. But I still go in and set my lineup every week. So what I ended up doing was giving him a warning and telling him that if he does it again, he will lose his first round pick, which he has 3 of them in this year's draft. I was like, after that, you will be kicked out of the league. Like, I can't have that kind of stuff in my league. But I wanted to get people's opinion on that, because I was talking to other people, and some people are cool with it. Some people are like, no, you always have to start a player, even if, you have to account for bye weeks and all that stuff. So I was curious to see where you guys fell on that, because for me, that's just a cardinal rule of no. And part of me wanted to kick him out immediately, because I just don't think that that's okay. But I honestly didn't know how to handle it, because we've been in this league, like I said, now going into 6 years.
Well, first of all, I think you handled it the right way. It'd be pretty. You'd mentioned not changing rules in the middle because of what that does to the league, but kicking somebody out without warning would do the exact same thing.
Right.
So you did well to hold your temper there. And yeah, absolutely. My first thought was, well, shit, take his pick. You know, and you handled it right. I'm going to give you a warning. You're not going to do that anymore. And if you continue to tank, you're tanking for nothing. You're just losing, and you're going to look like an idiot.
Yeah.
See, and some leagues have where either the consolation bracket matters, or you get a random draw of all the teams that don't make the playoffs to prevent that. I get the idea, because I am anti just losing on purpose to try to, especially if the person has some better assets and maybe just have a couple of great players that are on injury and they're close, so they're trying to dive down so they get a top rookie to put them in the championship. But by the same token, if I've been going all season trying to play my best lineup and my team is just not good enough, losing the top pick because of a random draw also sets me off. That would probably be something that would cause me to drop a league.
So so we do something like that. This is not a full dynasty league because of that. What we do is you keep a certain amount of players, like our rosters are 25, and we've increased it a little bit to now where we keep 14 players off that 25 roster. The consolation bracket allows you to get first pick in that free agent pool, but I still allow whoever the last place team is in the regular season to get the first overall pick. Because my fear is I was in another league with what you were talking about, Matt, where the consolation bracket plays out the first round pick. But a lot of times, and that means the team that just missed out on the playoffs ends up getting that first round, that number one pick, and their team is already good. And so you're not helping the bad teams get better. And that does, I've been in a league with that where I was in it for 4 years and I watched like almost every year, one or two people leave the league because they were wanting to get a pick because their team was just bad. Like they were trying, but for whatever reason, it was players falling off or they just weren't getting the points. Or there was one team that actually had he was fourth highest scoring in the league, but he only had 2 wins on the season because he was always playing the highest scoring team. And so I get, it's not fair to them when they're trying so hard to win. It's not like they're playing no players or they're playing bye-week players every week. They're trying to win, and their team is just not doing it. And then to all of a sudden find out, no, you're actually going to get the 5th pick in the rookie draft instead of the 2nd, which I don't know if you want to say they deserve it, but after a season like that, after a season of losing and you finishing as the 1 or the 2nd worst team, that is kind of the good feeling of it. All right, well, at least I'm going to get to pick a player that I think is going to be really good in the rookie draft.
Well, and some drafts, the difference between 1 or 2 and 5 can be devastating.
Yeah, that's true. Especially, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago? I can't remember, the Zeke and Henry draft. If you didn't get Zeke, I feel like you probably did not have a good pick in that first round. I can't even remember who else came out in that draft, but off the top of my head, I'm not remembering anybody that has really kind of balled out in that draft. This past year, if you took, my goodness, Barkley, you had the Geis, but even Geis at 2 right now is not looking like it. Well, he looked good, obviously, in the game the other day, but he hasn't done much. Ronald Jones, maybe you got Nick Chubb at 5, so that probably worked out for you, but I hear you. It's an interesting way to do it. It's a hard way to figure out how to do it because not every way is fair and you just, I'm with you. It's hard to reward losing. The one league that I was just talking about where I'm, if you want to say quote unquote, tanking in, that is the only league that I'm in doing it because I just truly believe in trying to win every single year. It is one of my biggest issues, I think, because sometimes I go all in to try and make a team go over the top and win it when it's probably not a team that should be winning, and I should probably just keep my picks, and I try to go all in and get some veterans, and it's caused me to have a couple teams that are really kind of in the middle spot, and there's nothing I can do to improve them because I've traded my picks over the past couple years to acquire these other players to try and help me win. See here, what else can we talk about with the tanking thing? I actually probably think that's it. That was my biggest thing. I wanted to get your guys' opinion on it, as we've talked about different stuff on here. Like I said, a lot of people kind of came at it different ways, and I agree with you, Tony. I just didn't want to kick somebody out for not that it's no reason, but just kick them out because then I just feel like that's bad juju for your league. So I was interested to see what you guys thought of that. So that kind of wraps up the football talk for today, since we already talked about the Colts and the Texans game tonight. So I want to talk about the most important subject that was brought up earlier, Mandalorian. Matt, I did not know that you were such a big Star Wars, or are you a big Star Wars fan? Is that why you're watching it, or are you just watching it because it's a show on Disney Plus that you've heard is good?
No, big Star Wars fan. I'm listening to Star Wars binge mode right now. I already have my tickets for Rise of Skywalker. My Facebook background is all Star Wars right now, and I've actually been rewatching all the movies and writing about them every week. So I was super pumped. That was one of the reasons I was hot on Disney Plus. My wife was excited about all the animated. I was like, one word, Mandalorian.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. That was one of the main reasons I got Disney Plus as well. It helped sell it to the wife. Like, hey, look, all the Disney movies on here for the kids to watch. She's a big Disney fan. But for me, it was all Mandalorian. So what have you thought, obviously, of the first 2 episodes? You obviously get the big bomb dropped on you on the first episode. I'm just gonna spoiler warning right now. Spoilers will probably be ahead with what me and Matt have what we're about to talk about. So if you have not watched the first 2 episodes yet, stop listening right now because we will talk about stuff that is brought up and I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. So I'll just say really quick, we appreciate you guys listening and hope everybody wins their matchups, and me and Dennis will be back tomorrow to do Friday previews so we can talk about the Mandalorian now. What are your thoughts overall on the first 2 episodes, and then we can kind of talk the 2 episodes really quick before we get out of here.
I thought it's been really good. One of the originally announced standalone films they talked about was a Boba Fett movie, and they wiped that off the schedule about 18 months ago, and I'm thinking it's because they rethought about that was right around the time they announced Disney Plus, and I think they had a concept for this kind of a story following a bounty hunter. So it's a very similar kind of idea, I think, to what we would have gotten there. But very curious about how it's going to play out. I really like Pedro Pascal, who is playing the Mandalorian. You haven't seen his face yet, but for those of you who are Game of Thrones fans, he was the Viper in Game of Thrones. He was also one of the main characters in a great Netflix cop drama, Narcos.
Yes.
For the first couple of seasons, he was one of the main characters. He's an actor I really like, and I thought he's been very good in this. I thought it felt very much like a Western at times. The end of the first episode, they have kind of a climactic shootout scene, reminded me of a cool shootout scene I like in kind of an obscure Ryan Phillippe, Benicio del Toro movie called Way of the Gun. Even the whole set reminded me of that. And so, I was totally bought in. I was enjoying everything about what they were doing. And then you get to the end and it's like, oh my God, now my heart is exploding with cuteness. I didn't think anything would top Porg, which I have a stuffed Porg in my office at work. I have one at home. I have used it as my avatar on social media. And I was like, Porg, you are now well into second place.
Yeah. So what do you think of that? Because obviously there are some people who immediately your mind goes to Yoda, right? Because, obviously it's the same species, but we all know, or obviously if you pay close enough attention, you know that cannot be Yoda. At least you assume it cannot be Yoda, because he is obviously already passed at this point in time in the movie. So what are your thoughts on where this, I guess we would still consider it a child. Again, I know the big talk about it was that it's 50 years old, but as we know from the original Star Wars trilogies, Yoda species can live for a very, very long time. So kind of what are your thoughts on, I guess we'll call them Baby Yoda, since we don't have a name for him yet, or her?
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting. Will it tie back to Yoda? So for those of you that maybe don't have a sense of where this fits in the Star Wars timeline, they've said the Mandalorian takes place approximately 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. Yeah. And obviously Jedi is the movie where Yoda passed away, so it would have been a few years after he would have passed away is when you're getting to this timeline. And obviously, we know Yoda was about 900 years old when he passed away. So this explains kind of a lot that maybe these guys don't reach maturity. It also kind of makes you wonder if they are just a species that is really, really good with the Force.
Yes.
Somebody on the social media pointed out that in Star Wars Episode 1, for as much as we like to clown on that movie, you see in the full Jedi Council there is a sort of female of Yoda species on there.
Yes.
And then obviously this young, we'll call him Baby Yoda because that's what's been adopted. By the way, if you just want a Twitter handle that will help you get through some really rough times, there is now at Baby Yoda Baby.
There you
and
go.
It's nothing but Baby Yoda memes. If you want to find it and you follow me on Twitter, I have retweeted a few about naps and about being the cutest thing in the face of the earth. So it's nothing but Baby Yoda memes. I don't know at what point I'll get tired of it, but it hasn't happened yet. But obviously in the second episode, you get that great, when he's reaching out, when Mandalorian's trying to take care of his wound, you're wondering if something's going to happen and kind of nothing happens. And then when the big fight action sequence at the end, you see him using the Force.
Yeah.
But obviously not a full maturity. You do get the sense he truly is a baby, not really able to verbally communicate and stuff like that yet. I've seen some weird internet theories that maybe this is going to be the reincarnation of Yoda, but you have to figure if it's 50 years old, it was alive for a few decades before Yoda passed away. If it's only been 5 years between the events of Jedi, and not everything. I actually kind of hope it's not any reincarnation or birthing of Yoda. It would just be cool that it's its own new character, but they've just done such a great job. The second episode, only about 32 minutes, has hardly any dialogue in it, and it's utterly riveting.
The stuff with the Jawas and everything it is amazing. So I've seen the same thing about the Yoda stuff. I wonder if that is coming from, and I'll be honest, I don't know that much about this, so I could sound completely wrong here. I've only seen one trailer for Rise of the Skywalker. I'm someone, when it comes to a movie that I really want to see, I try to see as little as possible about it, because I don't want anything ruined for me. So obviously, at the end of that first trailer, you hear the laugh, and there's a lot of people, at least I've seen and read, that think Palpatine is back. I obviously don't know that. If there's something in the trailer that has shown that, please don't. Well, I guess you're going to have to ruin it for me because we're talking about it. But there's a lot of talk about that. I would assume you've seen or heard that. They have actually
confirmed that Palpatine is back, and he's listed on the credits now for the whole. So he's back in some way. Who knows what way that's going to be? I've seen a lot of theories that maybe he cloned himself, and that the water fights that we see there are taking place on Kamino. Which is where the clone army was made. That would be sort of interesting. If you're really into those kind of things, I love the Binge Mode podcast. They did Mallory Rubin and Chris Ryan did about 30 plus minutes just breaking down the Rise of Skywalker trailer and doing a deep dive. So if you're into that, that's easily found on the Ringer website.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, like I said, I try not to watch because I am a huge Star Wars fan. So for me, I try, like I said, I've only seen the one trailer, and I'm trying to limit everything that I see and read just because I don't want. Because sometimes a lot of some movies do a very good job of not showing you anything important in the trailers, so nothing is really ruined for you in the movies. And I really don't think anything has been shown from the last two that I can think of off the top of my head that's kind of led to ruining anything, but I just don't want to take my chances. Like I said, obviously you hear the laugh at the end of the first trailer, and then I've heard that someone says something else happens in another trailer that makes you think Palpatine is back. And that's where I think some of the Yoda possibly being reincarnated thing comes from, because you have that thought on the Palpatine side as well. So I am curious as well to see where that goes. I am with you. I hope it's a completely other character, which then would lead to try and figure out, well, where did this character come from? Because you would think that Yoda didn't go outside of the Jedi Order and have, I would assume that their species is allowed to have sex and reproduce. Like you said, I saw that, too as well, all the talk about. I remember her in the movie, cause I don't know if you'll remember who this is. I'm a huge Plo Koon fan, who's a Jedi Master on the Council as well, from all of the extended universe stuff, cause you really don't see him in the movies, but I've always paid very close attention to those first three as well. So I'm interested to find out where that character comes from as well. Do you think there is any tie-in to Rise of the Skywalker from Mandalorian with it leading up? Because so for those of you who don't know, a new episode is released every single Friday leading up to the week of the movie, where the episode comes out on Wednesday, and then there's one more episode of The Mandalorian, which comes out the Friday after the movie comes out. Any tie-in with the Rise of the Skywalker, do you think?
I thought about that, but it's so close, and from a timing standpoint, so if it's 5 years after Jedi, it's still quite a ways before even the events of Force Awakens. And we've moved quite a bit beyond that. I actually don't think they're going to have a big tie-in, but I wouldn't put it past them, because this is the same group that owns Marvel, and there's been a lot of talk about whether Jon Favreau, who obviously did the first Iron Man and kind of helped set the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or Kevin Feige, who's the chairman of Marvel, is going to succeed Kathleen Kennedy as the chairman of Lucasfilm. And obviously, I'm a big Agents of Shield. Marvel is probably the other reason I went all in on Disney Plus, because they're going to have original Marvel series, and I love all those movies. But I remember I had actually been a little bit delayed to see Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and I was watching Agents of Shield, and I was like, oh, something happened in that movie.
Yeah,
because they quite famously had episodes that were building up to a point, and then had one right before and then one right after, and the tag at the one right before the movie didn't make total sense for the show, and then I'm watching after the show after the movie because I had to wait to see the movie to watch it with a friend, and I was like, oh, it really matters quite a bit. That show was built into what was happening in the movie, so it's possible, and you see that timing of they're going to have a penultimate episode right before the movie, and then they're going to have an episode right after. I don't think they're doing that with this particular series. I kind of hope they're not, because Rise of Skywalker is supposed to be kind of a definitive conclusion to the Skywalker film saga, basically the film universe that we've seen with the 10 that are out and the one that's coming. And it feels like Mandalorian is setting up to be to set the stage for an extended universe somewhere else. My hopes for the show are more that, Yoda was always kind of a character full of mystery. We don't know much about how he got to be a Jedi Master or his people or his planet. So the idea that we could see something cool and learn something about that species through this story is more fascinating to me. And the only kind of tie-in you could see is, I wonder if those guys that gave the Mandalorian the job are going to be somehow tied to the startup of the First Order.
Yeah, so that would be interesting. Yeah, I hope there's maybe some kind of call-in, like maybe you see the Mandalorian. There's obviously a very realistic chance that he's still alive at that point in time. So maybe you get like a little bit of a call to him. I would imagine that Baby Yoda doesn't necessarily tie into the movies at all. Could be wrong on that. I'm with you. I really hope that this is a start of them bringing the whole universe together, because obviously what they've done with Marvel has been outstanding. If you're a superhero fan or just a Marvel fan in general, the way that they have built this universe has been amazing. If they could do something like that for the Star Wars universe as well, it would be just awesome, especially if you can go off and tell different stories. Like, before we get out of here, I'll talk about, I can't remember what it was called on the Disney Plus app, but I watched maybe it was Expanding the Universe or something like that, where it talked about all the shows and everything coming, because I didn't know about the Hawkeye series, and there was another one that I really wanted to watch, and I cannot think of it right now.
Scarlet Witch is going to be doing a series.
Yeah,
also the Winter Soldier and Falcon,
right,
who's taking over as Captain America. Yeah, they're really expanding kind of the Marvel universe into Disney Plus, and I feel like eventually that's where they're going to be with Star Wars. I think creatively Star Wars is in a little bit of a tight spot, because some of what they tried to do with like the Solo movie didn't pan out. Last Jedi, I don't know how you feel, we're going to give some stuff away, is my favorite of all the Star Wars movies. I thought it was a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite movies of the last decade, but there were people, especially old guard Star Wars fans, that really rejected that. And so I think there's been some interesting backtracking. They put on hold future movies. They released the Game of Thrones creators from their series. There's rumors that Rian Johnson isn't actually going to make any more movies now. So I think there's a lot of questions, but they have this great platform, and they have more creative influence from people who I think Marvel actually really nailed it and did it right, and has been a model for how you can have small screen, big screen, this huge cinematic world that all feels distinct and unique, but is connected in some ways. And it would be really cool to see them do that with Star Wars. It feels like a realm of infinite possibilities, and we've only seen kind of a certain set of possibilities so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my one thing I would say on that is I hope that they they do start to spin it forward a little bit, if that makes sense. As you were just talking about, this is supposed to be kind of the definitive end to the Skywalker story. I know one of the new ones coming out is obviously about Obi-Wan Kenobi, probably right after episode 3. So probably what you see between 3 and 4 would be what I would assume the series is going to be about.
Yeah, that's what the series is going to be. And okay. I guess they got Ewan McGregor back, so that could be interesting.
Yeah, I saw that he was going to come back to do that. So my hope would be that after that, they are able to expand it, because there is so much of this universe that we don't know about. And I know when they first bought all the Star Wars stuff and brought them under the Disney umbrella, there was a lot of talk about the fact that they were not going to bring in, or they were going to kind of take away all the expanded universe stuff you see in comic books and books and everything that's not actually seen in movies, so you don't know about it. So that stuff is not necessarily part of the universe, if that makes sense. So I would love to see them go in different ways, see different stuff. I mean, we already obviously saw in episodes, what was it? I think it was in The Last Jedi. It was either Last Jedi or The Force Awakens. You see about, obviously they had the other, whatever you want to call them, acolytes or the other Force-sensitive children that had come in there that were learning under Luke before, obviously, everything happened with Kylo. I am with you. I love The Last Jedi. I know there were people who didn't. I went and saw the movie with a bunch of old Star Wars heads as well. And it was a little bit torn between them. There was a couple of them that really liked it. I think a couple of them were kind of turned off from the beginning because they felt like The Force Awakens was a lot like, my goodness, why can I not think of the first one now?
New Hope.
Yes, A New Hope, yeah. They felt like the storyline was kind of way too similar to that, which I did kind of get. Obviously, for me, it was kind of gut-wrenching to watch Han Solo die. He's always kind of been my favorite. I don't know how you felt about that. That was kind of, I don't know. I don't want to dive too much into that, but I love Last Jedi as well. I have really high hopes for this one. I think it's going to be phenomenal. I cannot wait for it. Only we're, a little less than a month away, or a little over a month away now from it coming out. So, I cannot wait as well. Now that I know you're such a big Star Wars fan, I look forward to discussing Mandalorian now moving forward. Oh, yeah. And then, definitely we can dive into some of the stuff before Rise of the Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker pod sometime too.
Oh yeah, we can do that definitely. Let's see here. You know what? I know exactly when we can do it. We can do it the Thursday before the movie comes out, because we'll have seen, hopefully we'll both have had a chance to watch that would be the preeminent episode, as you were talking about, of Mandalorian. So we can talk about anything in that might lead to the movie, and then we can preview what we thought about the movie, and then obviously we can, cause at that point, what'll we be? Fantasy playoffs should almost be.
Thursday night football will be over by then.
Yeah. And fantasy playoffs would almost be over too, so we don't even need to recap anything on Monday. We can recap just Star Wars. That sounds like a plan to me. Well, Matt.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you for staying on. For those of you who don't know, since you're obviously not in the group chat with me and Matt, Tony is not feeling well. He kind of left us a little while back, so I apologize about not announcing that sooner. We do hope that he gets well. I look forward to talking to both of you next week. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the Friday episode of Mandalorian as well.
Will do. Baby Yoda forever.
That's right. Baby Yoda forever. I'll talk to you later.
Prepare for glory!
I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly.
Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
And now, a thought from Geico Motorcycle.
It took 15 minutes to take a spirit animal quiz online.
Please be the cheetah. Please be the cheetah.
And learn your animal isn't the cheetah, but the far less appealing blobfish.
Oh, come on.
To add insult to injury, you could have used those 15 blobfish minutes to switch your motorcycle insurance to Geico.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on motorcycle insurance.
We know the joy of giving is its own reward. But who says you can't get something for yourself, too? Now when you buy Vanilla Visa gift cards, you can enter to win one of over 10 prizes every week for 10 weeks, including a grand prize of $10,000 in Vanilla gift cards. So get gifting and start sharing the delight for more chances to win. Go to get-gifting.com to learn more and enter for your chance to win. Cards are issued by the Bancorp Bank, MetaBank, and Sutton Bank, members FDIC, pursuant to a license from Visa USA Inc., and may be used in the U.S. everywhere Visa debit cards are accepted. Terms and conditions apply. Cards distributed and serviced by Incom Financial Services Inc., which is licensed as a money transmitter by the New York State Department of Financial Services. NMLS ID number 912772.